Section 1 of the Rover, Volume 1, Number 5. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Sonia. The Rover, Volume 1, Number 5. Edited by Seba Smith and Lawrence Labree. Section 1. Mirabel the Beauty by Jonas P. Phillips, Esquire. Happy childhood! When memory carries us back to thy joyous days, and the countless dear associations therewith connected, the cares, sorrows, and disappointments of maturer life are all forgotten, and we live over again the pleasant moments of our young existence. What fair visions are conjured up in the recollection of bygone years! The scenes of our youth are again before us, the village schoolhouse, the old playground, our young companions, all are seen in that magic mirror which restores the past in all its pristine bloom and loveliness. Even the merry shouts and the blithe songs that were so familiar to us again come to our ears, and the laughter of one more gladsome than the rest, and the bird-like melody of whose voice has lingered upon mine ears through all the changes and vicissitudes of existence. Mirabel Lester! Alas, that a life which dawned so joyously should close in sorrow and desolation. I left the pleasant little village of Mantua when the heroine of my story was 10 years of age, and a more lovely, sylph-like creature never flitted in the dream of a poet's fancy. Her complexion was a clear red and white, and a profusion of golden ringlets waved over a neck and shoulders the very models of symmetrical perfection. Mirabel Lester was indeed a little beauty. The only child of wealthy and adoring parents, every whim of childhood was indulged. Yet petted and caressed as she was one of the most amiable little creatures in existence, and dotingly fond of her little orphan cousin, Ida Coddington, whose parents were both dead, and who had been consigned to the guardianship of Mirabel's father. Ida was nearly of the same age with Mirabel, and although exceedingly beautiful, her beauty was of a totally different character from that of her fair young cousin. Mirabel, we have said, was fair and golden-haired. Ida was a little brunette, and her hair was as black as the plumage of the raven, and her countenance had ever a pensive cast, while that of Mirabel was always bright with the smiles of a joyous spirit, and she often endeavoured to create the same joyousness in her young companion. The rich ornaments which Mirabel, before the glass in her mother's boudoir, would clasp around her throat, had no brilliancy in the eyes of the little Ida, and when her gay cousin clasped the dazzling necklace around the throat of the little orphan, which strangely contrasted with her mourning habiliments, Ida was restless until she relieved herself from the ornament, which had no charms in her eye, nor seemed to her half so valuable as the simple braid, fastened with a golden locket, containing the hair of her deceased parents. Pass we over the childhood of the cousins, and sketch rapidly the stories of their lives from the period when they were introduced into society. Mr. Lester had taken up his residence in Philadelphia. His mansion was one of the most splendid in the West End of the city, and was constantly visited by the wealthy and most fashionable. Mirabel was the admired of all beholders. The beauty of childhood had ripened and perfected. Accomplished, gay, and fascinating, she was everywhere surrounded by a crowd of admirers, while Ida, who still retained the pensiveness we have noticed, was comparatively the object of little admiration. Mirabel had received many offers, but as yet her heart had never yielded to the influence of that passion which was to seal her destiny for weal or woe. One evening the cousins were invited to attend an assembly at the mansion of the wealthy Mr. Islington, the acknowledged leader of the ton. All the world was to be there, and among them the Count de Susanne, a young French nobleman, but recently arrived, and whose commanding figure and splendid moustache had already bewildered the brains of more than one half of the gay young ladies in the quiet city of Penn. Mirabel was attired for the evening, and as she surveyed herself in the mirror, her smiles proved that her toilette had been completed to her entire satisfaction. "Not ready yet, Ida?" said the beauty to her cousin, who entered the room as she took from the stand a splendid bouquet, which had been sent to her from some unknown admirer. "Quite ready, Mirabel," replied Ida. "How queen-like and beautiful you are looking this evening!" "Thanks for the compliment, ma chère. and you are looking as pensive and pretty as ever, but attired altogether with too much simplicity for an assemblage like that we shall meet at Mrs. Islington's. Let me fix this ornament among your dark ringlets, Ida," said the belle, at the same time taking from her jewel case a glittering tiara of diamonds. "No, dear Mirabel, remember, I am no heiress, and the simplicity with which I am attired is better suited to my state and inclination." "You were ever self-willed in this particular, Ida. After all, I do not think such beauty as yours requires the adventitious aid of ornament. I should be a fright without it. Besides, I have dressed to-night for conquest. For know, my pretty coz, I am determined to be the Countess of Soissons, or remain plain Mirabel Lester for the rest of my life." "Then you are determined to fall in love with this lion, Mirabel?" "I have already fallen in love." "Nay, cousin," interrupted Ida, "I thought you had never met the Count." "Nor have I, sweet simplicity," rejoined Mirabel. "I have fallen in love, nevertheless, not with the man, but his title. There is something in being a countess, notwithstanding your republican taste covets not such distinctions." The carriage was announced, and the conversation being thus interrupted, the young ladies wrapped their mantillas around them, and in a short time were among the brilliant crowd assembled at Mrs. Islington's. Here, as at all other parties of the season, Mirabel Lester was the belle of the room. Even the entrance of the Countess Soissons scarcely diverted the attention of the young gentlemen from the fair object of their admiration. "Ah, here is the lion of the evening, Miss Lester," said one of Mirabel's most ardent admirers. "Now may we despair of winning your attention even for a moment? After all, there is nothing very distingué in his appearance." "I cannot agree with you," replied Mirabel. "I never have seen a man of more graceful bearing." The Count was now introduced to our heroine, who soon engrossed his attention, and during the remainder of the evening he scarcely left her side. But Ida, was she not noticed? Was the orphan cousin of the rich belle totally neglected on that occasion? Not so. There was one present who admired her unpretending beauty and appreciated the graces of her intellect. Ida was beloved by a young gentleman who, like herself, was left an orphan at an early age, and while the foreign count was enchanting the ear of Mirabel with glowing accounts of Parisian life, Gansevoort Mordaunt was engaged in conversation with Ida, far more interesting to both. "Joy, dearest Ida," said Mirabel to her cousin one morning, some weeks after this memorable evening. "Joy is always welcome," replied Ida, blushing and half suspecting the cause of congratulation. "What so delights you, dear Mirabel?" "The prospect of your happiness. Gansevoort Mordaunt has asked a solemn question, and papa, having consented, gave me permission to tell you to fix as early a day as possible for the consummation of poor Mordaunt's wishes." "I wish I knew the day then that the Countess Soissons intends leading you to the altar, dear Mirabel. I should so like to date my happiness from the day which also sees you a bride." Mirabel turned pale as marble. The quick eye of Ida perceiving the sudden change, she started from her seat, exclaiming, "Heavens, Mirabel, you are ill! Let me call for assistance." "Not for your life, Ida. I shall be better presently. Sit down. I have something of importance to confide to you." "It must be important, Mirabel, for never did I see you looking so pallid and serious. What is the matter?" "Ida, you must promise to keep my secret. At all events, until after I am gone." "Gone? Where? What mystery is this? I promise anything, everything you can ask, dear Mirabel, for I am sure this secret involves your happiness. Speak." "I am the wife of the Countess Soissons." "Mirabel!" almost shrieked Ida. "Do not condemn me, Ida, even by a thought. Doubtless you think I have acted rashly, foolishly. So the cold world may think. I have deceived my parents. In that I feel and confess myself most culpable." "Why did you deceive them, dearest Mirabel? The promotion of your happiness was the chief aim and object of their existence. Had the Count solicited your hand with your approval, my life upon it, my kind uncle would have consented." "So did I tell the Count, Ida, but there were weighty reasons. which he urged with an eloquence so irresistible, for a private marriage, that my objections were overruled. The spell of the enchanter was upon me. I consented, and a fortnight since we were secretly married. A fortnight hence I shall be with him on our voyage to France. But before I go I must see you married to Gansevoort Mordaunt. Oh, do not look so reproachfully at me, dear Ida. Remember we have grown together, and in all our happy intercourse never, never has there been a cold look or an angry word between us. And never shall there be, dear Mirabel, whatever may be the consequence of this hasty marriage. But surely you, that is, the Count, means to reveal it to your father. You will not quit your home until you leave it his acknowledged wife. Time will show, was the evasive answer. You know my secret. I was unhappy until I had the Sultan's permission to confide it to you, my only friend. And now, dear Ida, fix an early day for your marriage. Say this day week. Be it so, dear Mirabel. But you were to be my bridesmaid. What will the world say if you attend not in that capacity? You, my constant companion, my near relation. And may I not so attend, Ida? And you a wife? Oh no, dear Mirabel, it would be practising a deceit at the altar of our Creator. We must contrive some excuse. Oh, Mirabel, God grant that you may be happy. Amen. I shall be happy. The Count loves me. My parents will forgive me. And the world, Mirabel? The world! What care I for the world, if I have my husband's love, my parents' forgiveness, and your unaltered affection? I shall heed not the world. Besides, Ida, though they may blame Mirabel Lester, they will not dare to censure the Countess de Soissons. And now I will leave you, for I know Gansevoort will soon be here to learn your decision. This is the gravest interview we have ever had. Let us both seem very gay and very happy when we meet at dinner. 1 week after the foregoing disclosure, Gansevoort Mordaunt led Ida Coddington to the altar. The marriage ceremony was performed at Christ Church, and at Ida's request but few were present on the occasion. Mr. Lester and his wife attended, of course, but Mirabel was absent. She was really unwell and anxious, and Ida easily obtained from her confiding and indulgent parents their permission that she should remain at home. The bridal party returned to the residence of Mr. Lester, but Mirabel was not there to greet them. The servant informed her parents that Miss Mirabel had left in the carriage with the foreign gentleman, and handed a letter to Mr. Lester, and he trembled as he broke the seal of the envelope. That letter apprised him of the secret marriage of his daughter to the titled foreigner, and also informed them of her embarkation that very day for France, with her husband. Her duplicity was acknowledged and forgiveness invoked, and while the grief-stricken parents lamented the error of their child, their hearts granted the pardon she solicited. A gloomy wedding day was Ida Coddington's. 2 years had passed since the marriage of the orphan niece of Mr. Lester to young Mordaunt. Fortune had smiled upon her, and her domestic life was one of cloudless felicity. She was the happy mother of a daughter to whom she had given the name of Mirabel. But where was she, after whom the little innocent had been so named? In the long interval referred to, not a line had been received from the Count or his wife. The letters of Mirabel's unhappy and anxious parents were all unanswered, and at last they resolved upon a voyage to France, in order to ascertain, if possible, the fate of their child. But Mirabel returned to them ere the preparations for their voyage were completed. It was a dreary night in December. The family were seated around the hearth, for Ida even since her marriage had continued to reside with her uncle. A carriage stopped at the door, and shortly afterward a female entered the apartment, an infant in her arms. Her abrupt entrance astonished all, and as she threw herself at the feet of Mr. Lester, and upraised her pale and anguish-stricken face, the father recognized his child, and he exclaimed, "Gracious heaven! Can this be Mirabel?" "Yes, yes. Father, forgive me, spurn me not, for the sake of this helpless little one." She was already forgiven, but sadly had poor Mirabel been betrayed. He in whom she had trusted, whose gay exterior and title were his only passports to good society in America, was an impostor. His title had been assumed. He was a needy adventurer, a gambler, and, as poor Mirabel too soon discovered, the husband of another. He was dragged from her side to a prison, upon the complaint of the wife he had abandoned, and to the galleys, while poor Mirabel, with the innocent offspring of her unhappy union, was left desolate and unprotected. At length she determined to make an effort to return home. In looking among the papers of her betrayer, she found the intercepted letters of her parents, containing renewed expressions of affection and forgiveness, which gave her new life and courage. Collecting the little treasures she had left, she converted them into money and left Paris. Arrived at Havre, she obtained a passage on board of a vessel about sailing for Philadelphia, and arrived there, as we have already seen, ere the preparations of her parents to proceed to France in quest of her were completed. She was once more completely happy. She was forgiven by her parents, and surrounded by those she loved. Yet was she sadly changed. All joyousness had fled from her. Her eyes had lost their brilliancy, and her cheeks their bloom, and none who knew her in her days of happiness would recognize in her emaciated form, her hollow cheeks and dim and sunken eyes, the poor remains of Mirabel the Beauty. End of Section 1.